Oh, we didn't decide which one of us is going
I
to
said
do
which one of us is going to do it. Welcome to Generation Dan. The only pot. It's not 89 degrees outside, and I want to kill myself. Is that?
It's a nice, balmy
Yeah.
10 degrees Celsius here, which is,
Yeah.
if anything, t-shirt weather for me. I'm having a wonderful time.
It's t-shirt weather and swamp ass weather.
Yeah, see, I welcome everyone to Generation Dan. Please like, share, subscribe, be our friends online, follow us on various platforms as we are
And don't
everywhere.
get swamp ass. Yeah.
And don't get, I feel like that is the new achievement. Like there was Einstein with the theory of relativity, and then curing swamp ass in the summertime would be the next. And like there's a female curing humidities key. I feel like that
Please
is
tell me that's not real.
humidities.
Yeah.
Humidities are a fact. And if you tell a woman, be like, I understand how hard it is to look pretty in the summertime. Humidities are a crime against humanity. Every one of them will understand.
No. I know what you mean by like the condition. I mean the term
Oh, I've
humidity.
personally coined it, as well as
Okay.
fingos.
All right.
Fingos is also my word. If you hear anyone say fingos, they got it from this guy.
What are fingos?
Oh, toes that are as long as fingers and articulate, they're disgusting. And if anything, those people should become pirates, just chop their feet off because it's gross. Used to tell a bit. So I've been talking with a bunch of people about this, was how like half of my material is based on me being enormously fat.
Yeah.
Not just fat, enormously fat. It's very key because like one of my bits was I like to travel. People who are on the same plane hate that I travel. Like that's just standard. And this past time that I went to Mexico, no one cared where I sat. And I was like, oh, I'm just a normal person now. I just fit in a seat. It's weird. Like, because I'm still huge, but people are like, oh, that's totally reasonable. And I'm like, really? It's surprising. But that's one of the things is that on a plane, I saw somebody use their fingers to swipe the tablet screen with their bare feet. Like, yeah. And I'll tell you, I've seen people take their socks off, cut their toenails, and I'm like, you're disgusting.
No.
And I will happily point out, be like, you're dirty. Why are you doing that? One lady took off her shoes, took off her socks, didn't even put her socks in her shoes, just took them off. So they're just laying on the ground, put her feet up beside her husband. I'm like, hey, Disgustor, put your feet down. Other people have to sit there. Oh, nobody has a seat. Yeah, there are other people who are going to use it later. Disgustor is a top tier one.
Sounds like a minor He-Man villain.
100%. I am a fan of He-Man. I have the power, baby. I have the power. It's just
He-Man.
He-Man. I'll get you. Yeah,
you're better at it than I am.
There's a reason I have the Havoc skull right here, guys. This is right here.
Yeah.
It's just the mouth moves. It's fantastic. I got to build the rest of that. It's got horns. Yeah, go ahead. Hold on. Here, go ahead. There we go. The magic of the internet. People can just pass by. So, Atlas, we're talking about child labor and the hilarity. Thank you, Walkie Talkie. Fisto was my fave for obvious reasons. If anything, Fisto is the He-Man of the New World. Like that's the.
Okay, now I just want to see
of the Revolution.
I want to see Bane and Skeletor just have a conversation.
I feel like it's got to be the Oronauts Bane, who's like, I'm Bane. Yes, that's my name. Have you ever seen that? It's one of the best raps I've ever seen in my life.
Oh no, I was just thinking of like Tom. What was it, Tom Hardy? Right?
Yeah.
Tom Hardy. Like, do one of those AI things. Like, you've seen the ones where where it's like Obama, Bush, Trump, and who's the fourth one? Clinton usually. Where they're just like hanging out or something.
It is.
But I just want to see that, but for like Skeletor and Bane.
Yes.
Them playing Minecraft or some shit.
Interestingly enough, do you know that for the live action He-Man, it was what is his name? Frank Langella played Skeletor and did a spectacular. The guy's a chameleon. He's very impressive. Yeah. I will. I'm just picking up the Oronauts. Hold on.
I'm ordering things online while we're
Yeah, no, that's totally reasonable. Come on, let's not pretend like we're not risky Google search Bane and
No,
Skeletor
no, no,
Rule
no. I know
34.
that's a typo. God damn it.
It's accurate. Walkie talkies are neat. That's listen.
Yeah.
I feel like Bane and Skeletor that's top tier. That's top tier. Just if anyone is wondering, here, let me post it in the comments. This is the freestyle Bane done by the Oral Knots, they will mix stuff up constantly on like from movies and stuff and revoice stuff, and they're very entertaining. But
Okay.
that's one of the things where it's Bane in the scene where the football game happens and the floor falls out.
Yeah.
He starts rapping
Oh
and it's like, I'm Bane, yes, that's my name, and then someone's like, you suck. He's like, I'll kill you. Who said that? It's very funny. But I'm like, if you pair that with Skeletor, because
oh my god,
I think I've sent you a bunch of them. Is I regularly will get little memes of Skeletor saying like, just
until
crazy
next time,
yeah.
and then he runs off.
Until next time, and he runs away, and you're like,
Yeah.
that's horrible.
Yeah.
But also, actually, walkie talkies are neat. Will send me stuff like it's He-Man and his what looks like a loincloth is actually being shaved, and it's like it was never a loincloth, and you're like,
Yeah. I think the most annoying part about being your friend is that you send me
so
memes,
much.
which is fine, but you send them to me in every single app that we know each other in. TikTok, Instagram, WhatsApp, I almost said AIM, Facebook Messenger. Like wherever you find them, you just go copy paste in the Messenger thing for that app. So I gotta be like, why do I have 7 notes? Oh, they're all Dino. Okay, great.
Well, yeah, that's that. Yeah, I can't. That's when I just tell people, I'm like, listen, I know I'm horrible, but also it's some funny stuff,
No,
So it's like,
okay, they are funny. I'm not
I
saying they're
appreciate
not funny. I'm just saying that, like, just stay in one lane, please. I can't keep track of it all.
Listen, for most of my life, I was so fat, I had needed 2 lanes. It's just how it was.
Okay, child labor, I'm saying with an exuberant voice as if it's a good thing. So I know we talked about work and like our relationship with work a few weeks ago. That God damn it, it looks like him too. That's the worst part.
Thank you for our viewers sending that stuff in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we talked about that. Where like I know recently a couple states that suck legalized child labor. They're like, hey man, if you're 14, you can work at McDonald's now. Like,
well, so this is the whole thing, was that they actually did a whole, hey, Michael Bryan's watching. Dino is probably one of my favorite comedians. Sorry, Dan, I love you too. So I don't know who Dan is, but
I think he means the podcast.
Maybe well, that's fair. That's fair. Don't worry, Michael Bryan. We love you. It's all good.
Love you too, Michael.
Michael Bryan notoriously will tag me in shit, and I'm like, you bastard. I'll like it, and then be like, stop tagging me, you bastard. And then he gets mad at me, and I'm like, we're still friends. It's okay. Because I know, see, his way is tagging me versus my way is just sending tons of shit. But so key thing to keep in mind was that he says, yes, he meant the podcast. There you go. Thank you, Michael Bryan, and thank you for watching as well. What happened was there were children immigrants. Okay, so children who had migrated, not the children of immigrants. They were immigrants themselves that were 14, 15, and 16 years old. And were being used for nighttime cleaning of a meat processing plant, I believe was what happened.
Okay.
And they got caught. The company, not the children. And subsequently, magically, as government and politics are magic, they proceeded to change the laws to make it okay for those children to work overnight. Now, conveniently, they are allowed to work shorter shifts, and at reduced pay, which that's.
So I know it's the case for, like, let's say, okay, example, your parents own a machine shop, right?
Yes,
you guys, you and your siblings had to work at the machine shop even though you were let under 18.
All of us.
Right.
Every one of us can say, and we didn't just work there, but a lot of the time, like when we were really young, it was for no pay. When we were teenagers, it was for some pay. And like nothing, like it was still always over minimum wage, right?
Yeah.
Because it's real work. Like
Mhm.
that was the only time in my life that I had sweat drip off my face. Like I was hunched over
Yeah.
doing things and it was dripping off my face. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. My dad's like,
Yeah. It's
let's go.
going
Let's do it. And I'm like,
yeah, going into the hot metal
it's
or whatever.
absolutely not. It's
No.
yeah, it was but that
Okay,
was the
because
thing. Yeah.
whenever you say machine shop, I always, like, imagine, like, a medieval forge. I know it's not what it was, but that's what my brain
Like,
puts
kind
it.
of.
Yeah?
A difference was so there was one area which was, uh, welding and stuff, and that's very heat intensive,
Yeah.
and then there were other areas where we would just be working with steel, and that would be milling machines and lathes and drill presses and stuff like that. Now,
Mhm.
all of those things do generate heat, but it's a different type because welding is your, using heat to bond metal, right? So
Yeah.
it's a very intense and also very chemical filled. Like we had one guy, his name was Fong, and he was unbelievably talented. He came to Canada on working on oil tank engines, like the diesel engines.
Holy crap, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So he worked for my dad the whole time my dad had a company,
Mhm.
and Fong would smoke like he'd have a cigarette just hanging. He's a Vietnamese man, and it would have it hanging all day long from his mouth. And while my dad still had a business, the law changed where you couldn't smoke indoors. And I was like, "Hey, Dad, should we say something?" He's like, "We're all breathing in horrible things in this place,
Yeah.
so I think we'll let it pass." I'm like, "I don't know. Well, I'm an idiot, right?"
I
So
think if it wasn't, like, public facing, right? The
no, no, like,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things, like, you learn the law, that like, if somebody like a salesperson would come to, like there was a service entrance, and then there was, like, the business entrance. If nobody was in
Mhm.
the business, they would come through the service entrance and then stand at a line where the tile stopped because that's where the liability starts.
Yeah.
So if they walk in there and something happens, they're fucked. And
Yeah.
realistically, we're all terrifying looking. You're like, yeah, you're not gonna leave alive, bro. That's and he would just be like, he'd try and get someone's attention, be like, oh, is there somebody I could talk to? And one of us would go over because it was a family business. We had workers, but not
Yeah.
that many. But from a young age, my older brothers had it much worse because they would have to bike there after school
Ugh,
and
dude.
clean. And I'm telling you, bro, like you build muscles cleaning like that, but
Mhm.
they're 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 angry muscles, like mean, like ugh,
Mhm.
muscles is not.
Biking uphill muscles.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
well, like both ways uphill. Like
Yeah.
it's quite
That's
horrible.
the
Yeah.
that's the worst part. My father worked as vice president for Acer, then I took more of being a stand-up comedian and actor. Well,
Which
you know,
it can only be dangerous if they have chicken wings to throw at you, right? That's for being stand up. It's much
that just
better.
sounds delicious, to be honest.
Fair, fair.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's that, but that's like. Did you have a job growing up, Alice?
So my first job was when I was 17. I worked at a dog groomer. I was a dog
Okay.
groomer.
What
And what?
what kind of pay?
It was so in California at the time, the minimum wage was 15 an hour. It was 16 an
Oh,
hour.
okay.
Yeah, so slightly
That's
above minimum wage.
yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
and
That's
then
reasonable.
yeah,
Bike both ways uphill in summer with snow on the ground. That's
the brand. Yeah,
100%. That's
yeah,
exactly those kind of those are the muscles, baby.
yeah.
Okay, but that's not
Yeah.
that bad of a thing, right? Like that seems
No,
fairly reasonable.
that was very reasonable, but I think because in California there are a lot of like strong worker protections to an extent, anyway.
Was
Um,
there really? Hmm,
for
interesting.
like in the case of like when I got the job, I think I was about less than 6 months away from my birthday, turning
Uh
18. So I think they were just like, it'll be fine.
yeah,
I don't know if it was the case if I was like just turned 17 and
yeah.
they got a year until and maybe an inspector comes in or I tell the um what's that called?
Labor board.
Labor board. Thank you. Yeah.
I worked as a paper when I was 10 and had to share my paycheck with my older brother who did half the work. Did he do half the work though? Because I'm the youngest of 5. I know exactly how older brothers help out. Fucking dickheads.
Yeah.
How many dogs did you manage to seduce as
Okay. I don't know if I managed to seduce any, but I definitely touched a lot of dog buttholes. So there's this thing called anal glands. And
Yeah.
okay, I'll stop there. But just
Submissions from 1800s. I'm working 16-hour days for children. 1900s. I'm off to fight war. 2000s. I'm offended. I love it. Thank you
eh,
very much. Okay, and then before unions came along, every day was bring your
bring
child
your
to
child to
work.
work. Yeah, that's true. No, that's definitely a thing where
100%.
yeah, I saw like a thing once where uh it was like a millennial who was talking to their grandparent or
Mm,
something, um, and the millennial's dad was like, I had to, fight for this and blah 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 blah.
yeah.
And then when they were talking to the grandparent was like, "Yeah, the reason that we were able to afford a bike for your dad when he was like 10 was we got a union."
Yeah. Like, see, this
Yeah,
is this is the weird part, and it was something that I was talking about with Victoria. Was like, even now, there's a bunch of studies that are coming out that they're like 80% of people in existence lack the ability to critical think when given bad orders, bad instructions, bad uh, um, it-
oh,
you know things to follow. And you're like, look, like I'm sorry, but this kid is a fucking cool kid. This one, he's got a
which one?
fucking pipe, and he's like, yo, I got my canteen. Let's go rock this joint, And I'm like, if the kid didn't get the black lung, I feel like that guy, like,
Mhm.
we need more kids like that. I don't know. It's like definitely like they can you imagine though how pissed off somebody's going to be if a kid makes the same wage as they do? Would you like, you know what? It's same job,
Yeah.
same pay. It's only
It's the
fair.
kind well, it's kind of the same thing, like, whenever, they propose raising minimum wage, you have people, usually on the poorer side who are against raising minimum wage because, like, "Well, then I'll be making minimum wage," and I'm like, "Yeah." Then you go to your boss and be like, "Hi, if I'm going to be making minimum wage, I'm gonna go to an easier job. Bye." Like,
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
don't I don't knock people like that. That's the
but
real
yeah.
problem is people who are like, "Oh, well, we shouldn't be making minimum wage." No, but you should be making more. If you don't
Yeah.
have a minimum wage job, you should be making more, and that's
Minimum wage has this weird stigma where minimum
yeah.
wage equals you either suck at your job or you're a child, which is not what it should be. Minimum wage should be enough to live on, but
Yes.
it's not. Not even
So
close.
oh,
Yeah.
me and Jen had to wash our dog Daisy yesterday. She was rancid. I didn't know there was such a thing as butt mouth. It's a lot to unpack in that statement. I'll tell you that
Yeah,
much.
I'm just gonna leave that and continue on with my life.
Yeah, my
How
grandpa used
poor
to tell me
family
how
was she?
poor 8 or 9
No
brothers
thought.
and sisters. They were poor. My grandpa couldn't pull it out of the driveway. He couldn't pull it of anything
Yeah.
apparently.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
when I assume condoms weren't so good back then, or they were Puritan or something. I'm not sure.
I doubt it.
Walkie-talkies are neat. What you're
But like, but that's
Yeah,
so realistically though. Um, the way of the world used to be that if you had children, number one, the more children you had, they would start raising each other, right?
yeah.
And then only if there's serious problems did the parents get involved. That allowed both parents to try and produce income, right? Because
Mhm.
with a lot that many children, you need that income.
There was
That's
that,
one.
and then until like I don't know the 40s, it was like yeah. So there's like a 30% chance my kids are going to die in infancy.
Also
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
Also, and remember, like, look, when type 1 diabetes started coming about, like it was the children that were in comas, like en masse,
yeah.
because their bodies could not handle it, right? And that was the creation of insulin. You're like, listen, the idea that children would like die all the time, specifically children that look like our friend, the pipe wearing canteen
Yeah.
holding walking stick armadillo of a child who also has blonde hair, which is ridiculous, but like is they wouldn't last, right? Because even the development of a child is so much happens so much throughout the youth that, like, look, your brain isn't fully matured for critical thinking until 25, right?
Ish.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a long time. And you're going, okay, so think about it. Like, everything you do or make a child suffer through is going to have an impact on their long-term existence, right? So whether it be in education, training, but it's also toxic work environments and smoking a pipe back and forth one walk to
Yeah.
work. But it's, it's like, now that that law has changed. I want to say it's Idaho. I'm not sure though.
I think it was Idaho or Montana. One of the states where like you have the Pacific Northwest and then nothing, and then Minnesota, and then it starts mattering again.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, but
I
that's, yeah,
I was thinking about like the map of the U.S. and it looks like if you're looking from west to east, which is the
yeah,
opposite of what how it was founded, where it went from east to west.
of
It
course.
looks like somebody drew the states and then did that thing where you start running out of room, so you have to make things smaller and smaller as you get more closer to the edge.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
All right, Minnesota's gonna be this. Wait, I have that much left. Okay, Ohio's half as big. Rhode Island's not even gonna be there. Rhode Island just. Sorry, that's
Yeah,
completely unrelated.
that's okay. Here, and then we got the children chimney
Yeah,
sweeps, which I'm like, listen, it's
these
small
two.
places. I get
Yeah.
it. But that's, so there's two sides of it though. On one level is, it was used as cheap labor, was for
Mhm.
children. Whereas on the other side, you're like, children were used in various ways, like with regards to mining and excavations and emergency things, where they're the only ones who could fit. Which I'm like, like, where, considering the situation and the poverty that the world is suffering through right now, at what point is it fair to allow children to contribute to a family's economic situation?
Um, I think because okay, so if your brain isn't really developed until 25,
Yeah,
um, and the worker protections for children are less so, the only people who would be looking out for them would be their parents.
true.
But if their parents just need okay, just fucking we gotta keep the lights on in this place. Um, it made sense back then, but like 150 plus years or 100 plus years on
Yeah.
than what it used to be. I think that kids should be fucking going to school.
Well, but realistically, this is the first time in history where school was a daily 8-hour
Yeah,
thing
definitely.
too, right? Like,
Um,
when
since
you
like
look
the
at it,
50s, I think, right?
well, the whole idea behind Sunday school was that the church was in charge of teaching kids how to read, write, and basic arithmetic. And
Yeah,
then it was like, the world, go for it. Like, that was, if you were from a prosperous family, they would hire tutors and stuff like that. So you'd be educated on a daily basis, right?
okay.
Other kids just got around to shenanigans and tomfoolery, which, hey, I'm all for shenanigans and tomfoolery. Don't get me wrong. But at some point, they're going to turn to crime, which also I'm in favor of. Like, we need more child crime. Let's just say that right there. Less child murder, more child crime.
I really ought to start editing these down into clips for no context, and then just be like, how to make Dino look bad. Maybe pay kids to be in focus groups for toy companies, and then have them review it. That would be cool. Um,
So, okay, there's been a few TikToks, and I actually saw them when I was looking through your TikToks, Atlas, was
which ones?
parents. No, it just followed your, like,
Oh,
I was able to scroll, and it was somehow
yeah, yeah.
preceded yours, but
Mhm.
it was about how a lot of grocery stores, like, we've always been taught that, like, where you look, they pay extra to be in
Yeah,
that spot, right? And then you have the stuff way up top that nobody cares about,
yeah.
and then way down low nobody cares about. But now, down low is the most expensive spot because it's all the kids stuff, because people take their kids for grocery stores.
Oh, and the kids go, "I want that," or whatever,
Well, he
right?
goes, I guess, he goes, look, he goes, you're looking at all the normal grocery brands
Yeah.
are right in the eyesight, right? Higher up was healthier stuff. Lower down was all cartoon characters and razzmatazz. And you're like, holy fucking shit. Like, that's insane, because, like it's marketing. Like think about it. Kids know who Mickey is still,
Yeah.
which the fact Mickey used to be quite racist, I feel like him being canceled is on its way, but whatever. Okay.
I think it was the kind of thing where they were like, "Yeah, fucking
Mice are
Song of the
racist. It's
South,
fine.
blah blah blah." Like, I'm sure they were. He kind of survived the initial salvo of that. I
I
think.
still don't know what Goofy is because people are like, he's a cow. I'm like, he's not a cow.
I
That's
thought he was a
ridiculous.
dog.
That's what
Not
I thought. But then Pluto is a dog.
Pluto. Yeah, I
So
got it.
a dog can't have a dog pet, like, which I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying I don't believe that to be scientific truth.
Oh,
It's
I
very
thought it was going
peculiar.
to be something like he, like how there are apes, there are chimps, and there are humans, and they're both from the same. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but
Well, okay, but realistically, Hello Kitty is not a cat, which you're like, it's a little girl, and you're like,
it's a little girl.
it's a little girl, which
The fuck.
that's definitely, listen,
Yeah.
that kid needs to go to the doctor. I'm just saying, a little bit furry, a little bit pointed ears. Maybe he's a devil child. Just, but that's like, look, if they had to, okay, the blank at Shoppers Drug Mart have the backache products on the bottom shelf.
Yeah, for real. I know part of me wants to get those little skateboards that like when you're like a mechanic rides on to go change the oil or whatever.
Definitely.
I screw a shopping cart. I should just get one of those and like
Listen, I see. This is where I feel like there's a certain benefit to allowing all people to be employed legally, right? I don't think that students and or children should be penalized. I think they should definitely still get a full wage, right? There shouldn't be
Mhm.
no discount for hiring children.
Yeah.
But I do believe that real innovation and real progress would
Mhm.
come from a youthful mind over an old, like, there are very few old people who still um desire that kind of creative outlet, whereas children are all about their creativity, right? Even if they don't realize it, they are,
Yeah.
right? So it's like the idea, because remember, think about it, how many car companies are like, oh, we do single occupancy vehicles? None. There's a
Yeah.
motorcycle or like a scooter
Yeah.
and even then it's got an extra seat. So it's not. But the idea behind, oh well, a personal motor vehicle where it's low on gas, low mileage, low maintenance, that's a great idea. But nobody cares because, oh well, no, you only need a car if you're a family person. What if you're a little kid and you just need to get from point A to point B safely, right? Like there are things that could be innovated as a necessity, and opening things up has always led to growth on and innovation, right?
Mhm.
Like it's the same idea of opening things up, like what was it before? Like opening contracts to different so it's not exclusively through a few tiny gigantic companies, right? It's expanding things and allowing people who aren't quote unquote experts to actually involve themselves and try and make things better, because look, the greatest screw that ever was created uh wasn't necessarily a, you know, used for the simple fact that the guy who created it nobody liked. You know, it's that, which is ridiculous. And that we have too much of that where it's like, hey, you just have to take it, and you're like, because there's nothing else. You're like, that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. That's definitely a thing where like I, have been since the pandemic, I've been fighting hard for expanded public transit in everywhere.
And
Uh,
unionization,
yeah, and
right?
unionization in LA, but like that goes a huge way for for kids, for
Yep.
people who you're 15. Turning 16 in the U.S. is deified because you're like, I can drive a car now. But like
Mhm.
for a lot of places in Europe, if like where the public transit is expanded and robust enough, um,
You still get
you
around.
you can still get around. Like
Yep.
something like I think it's the Dutch Republic or and I don't know which Northern
All
Europe
over the place, all over
European
Europe.
country. Well, no, one of
Yep.
them one of them has like the highest level of child independence because a kid can get around on a bike on a on the bus, on the train,
It's
and
also a safety issue,
yeah.
right? Like there was a Netflix show about that where it's young kids in Japan
Mhm.
uh being out on their own, like having errands, doing grocery shopping. It's
Is that
it's
the reality show where it's like a contest and the kid has to go
I'm
he's like
not
3,
sure. I'm
right?
afraid to watch it because I'm like, I feel like nothing good is gonna come out of this. Like we're just
Mm.
gonna be like, yeah, kids should work.
I don't think they do that on their own. I think it's like a cutesy little like, "Okay, let's see if he can make it to the market. He's 3," or whatever, like
It's supervised because obviously there's
yeah.
cameras, but it is fairly independent. Like, but also too, I was talking about this with Victoria over dinner. Was that she was raised until she was 9 in the UK.
Mhm.
And one of the luxuries or differences between Europe versus the Americas was that people in Europe suffered very recently from war, that the people who could fight fought, the people who couldn't didn't last, right?
Yeah,
And that creates it's a quasi culling of, you know, people. And whereas North America, they're like, and that resulted in a lot more people who are capable of critical thinking and the ability to stand up for themselves, right?
yeah,
Because that's part of war and conflict, right? Is you learn how to interact. Whereas in North America, we never had war on our footsteps, right? So
yeah,
we there's a lot of people who have been coddled their whole life and aren't capable of critical thinking and able to stand there going, hey, that's not right, I'm standing up. Which there were a lot of people who, there was a story, I forget, it's the city of Athens, but I forget which state because almost every state has an Athens. But it's true,
Georgia, maybe? That's the most famous one
I
in the US.
feel like
Yeah,
it wasn't, because I remember
okay,
Athens, Georgia is a famous city, right? So
yeah,
they were saying how the men went to war, and while they were gone, people who couldn't go to war essentially took advantage of the men that were left, the seniors, the women,
yeah,
the children, and were fining them just exorbitant amounts. It was a police chief, judge, and the mayor, and they were just essentially just stealing money left, right, and center. Like, you were jaywalking, you got to go to jail, and you got to pay a huge fine. And like, it was crazy. The guys came back from war, literally stormed City Hall, took them out, and re-elected a new government, because you're like, absolutely not. And that's the big difference, is that when you don't have access to people who are critical thinkers and stuff, it's a different scenario. So Victoria was saying how, like, when she came to Canada, it was different stuff was focused on in school, whereas in the UK, that idea of critical thinking was super important. So now when you have the idea of children, you're like, okay, but them not understanding how work works. Remember, school is not like work.
mhm,
It's a type of work, like administrative, like I worked at a bank, very comparable, right?
yeah,
Whereas when I worked at a machine shop, which was up until I was 21, um, that was extremely physical, required critical thinking, but also problem solving, because we built, like, my dad was only a machinist, but a machinist used to be just under an engineer, right? They
okay,
had to understand things, but it was more, because it was a trades, it was more hands-on experience, not learned mathematics for engineering.
yeah,
So we built in our own shop, like a huge crane that could carry thousands of pounds. We did it ourselves, which people were like, "Oh, what company did you hire to do this?" They're like, "We did it," and they're like, "Huh?" We're like, "Yeah, no, we just did it ourselves." And they were like, "That's incredible, right?" But that was how we did things. Italy, you can ride a 50cc scooter with no license. Sweet Jesus, I'm going to Italy.
I know, right?
A ton of people nowadays just ride scooters who live in large cities to save money. No car, no.
Yeah,
So
that's a good
in
point.
the city of Toronto right now, they're saying that an electric scooter, because there are some electric scooters that can go over 25 kilometers an hour, or 25 miles. I'm not sure. I think it's 25 kilometers. But because of that, they're being termed as a motorcycle. And
Mm,
if it's a motorcycle, it's a, because there's no license. You don't have a license to, because an M class license is for motorcycles.
yeah,
So if you don't have all that stuff, um, they can charge you up to 25 grand, which you're like, hey, are you telling me you're going to screw over the person who can't afford a car and who's like, I'm just trying to get around faster than my feet? And you're like,
yeah,
yeah, 25,000. You're like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense.
yeah. No, it definitely screws over people who 14 years and older. For which part? The
Yeah, what was
14
that
years and older.
walkie-talkies need? Is that uh for Italy, the no license? Because that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah,
But
14 is a good
yeah,
age.
but for people who can't, you know, afford either afford that or just like the costs up front with buying a car, or
Yeah,
if you're underage, or if you're differently abled,
yeah, yeah,
where it's like for people who have more severe epilepsy, when you get diagnosed with it, your doctor is just like, "And I will take that. Thank you very
yoink.
much.
Yeah,
Bye." Like, you're fucked. And if you
for
like, you
scooters.
can still ride, uh, like a scooter or a bike, because if you fall, it's just easier.
Bicycle, not motorcycle, though, right?
Yeah, but not a motorcycle.
Yeah,
Bicycle or like a scooter. If you fall and like
yeah.
fall over, it's just you. You're not like taking out another car. You're not t-boning somebody in an intersection or whatever.
That would
Nice.
make it more
Okay,
fun, though.
got it.
It would be make it more fun. Yeah.
What if you have a seizure on a scooter? Like,
No, being able to T-bone a car with your scooter.
oh yeah, maybe.
See, that's
Because like
one
I
of the,
remember
yeah,
when the bird scooters dropped in LA, immediately, because I was
the
still living
tall
at,
green ones, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Are they
yeah.
electric?
So they're electric.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
But like I remember when I dropped immediately, because I was still living at home in Santa Monica,
Right.
people lost their shit because
Oh
they're
yeah.
like, there's people driving or going around everywhere, crowding our sidewalks. And, like it was all fucking
Yeah.
car brains where they're just like, why is it not one more car on the road? Also, I can't find a place to park. I don't understand how that works. Like it's self
Yeah.
defeating logic.
Well, so I was having this conversation too, was that
Yeah,
like the fact that all major roads now have like especially in Toronto, there's been a huge influx of them removing a lane of road to
for bike
benefit
lane.
bike lane. And I'm like, number one, see, you nod when the fact is you have your main road,
Yeah,
you have adjacent roads that are completely barren who are perfect for a bike lane because there's nobody fucking driving, but they're like, no, we have to be on the main road. Absolutely not. I don't think that that's reasonable because notoriously bikes do not follow the rules of the road. They blow through stop signs, they blow through red lights, they do not respect pedestrians either. And it's because it's the Thunderdome. They can, well, you don't have a license for a bicycle.
I think it's more the momentum, or you want to keep your momentum. But okay, I understand it when it's just like the painted line on the road and the little painted bicycle. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, that they suck at it. But when it's a protected bike lane, which is you have like poles or something, so
sure.
you know a car isn't gonna like a rear view mirror isn't gonna
Sure.
clip you and knock you
But then
into the sidewalk or something.
they still will blow through a red light, which you're like, absolutely not.
Yeah,
That
no,
you deserve to
that's
get you just I hope you get launched like a seal getting hit by a killer whale, just like just right through the air because you're a dickhead.
yeah.
Cyclists should have an equivalent to car insurance. My buddy and I were stopped at a red light and a cyclist T-boned his car. Oh, your friend got charged. Jesus Christ.
I don't
That's
know how to, because like with pedestrian, where cyclists technically count as pedestrians. I think that's why.
which is
Um,
false. Like
yeah.
that's unreasonable because I've seen a bicyclist, a cyclist hit a pedestrian
Mhm.
and they were like, "Fuck you," and it's like, "Nah, bro, stay right here. We're calling the police
Yeah.
because you hit me." Like, if anything, it's some sort of vehicular assault, right? Like that's what it should be. But at the same time, like, I don't. I'll be honest with you, okay, Alice. I hate people on bicycles, just straight up.
I know
Okay,
you do. I know you
but
do.
yeah, you know I do.
Yeah.
But
Um,
realistically, if somebody says, "Hey, I can't afford a car, but I'm going to bike," and I'm like, you know what? Great. There's an empty street right next to the main street. By all means, use that
mhm.
happily, reasonable. Because you know what? Up until in my youth, we were still allowed to. You could use your bicycle on a sidewalk, and it's fine,
Yeah.
right? And then they're like, "Oh, you have to be on the road," and it's like, okay, but that's terrifying, right?
Yeah. No,
So
that's fucking
it
awful.
is, and
Yeah.
there's a video of it's somewhere in Asia. I believe it was in Hong Kong where bus drivers
Yeah.
would get put on a stationary bike
Yeah.
and someone would drive a bus really close to them. And every time they're like, ah, and you're like,
Yeah.
absolutely, it's terrifying, right?
Yes.
So the idea that you should be able to cycle safely, I'm absolutely for it. Why on the main road though? That doesn't make sense to me, right? Like it's
Yeah,
it's you're coddling to some asshole who wants to wear tights on a main road. Yeah, you fuck yourself. That's absolutely not.
yeah. I think as you get more bike infrastructure, you're going to have more like problems, and you
Well,
have to deal with those problems. And
you
I know
either
we've
need
gotten way off the main topic, but I'm sorry. Uh,
well, who do you think is going to make those bike lanes? Children. There's children because
yeah,
they're very small. They need little hands. It's fair.
yeah, yeah,
But that's well. Think about it though. Is how much like LA, like Toronto, is extremely behind on a public transit infrastructure,
mhm.
right?
Which is so sad because LA could be like I think it was like City Beautiful or one of the YouTube guys where they were like LA could be really good for biking, and they it just isn't
Yeah,
because they just decided to. Um,
but that's like my perspective on that is like because there's no age limit for cyclists and stuff. Just to try and
mhm,
bring it back to our topic, right? Like
yeah,
educating children on cyclist etiquette and
yeah,
being around cars. Like, look, how many times have you seen somebody driving a car and cuts off an 18 wheeler? Like, yeah, that
yeah,
person should lose their license. You know why? Because they're going to kill somebody.
yeah,
And also, too, I've I've witnessed with my own two eyes somebody cut off an 18 wheeler and the 18 wheeler did not even realize just because
yeah,
hey, an 18 wheeler does not feel I think I might be hooked somewhere. No,
yeah,
they don't feel nothing, right?
yeah,
And like that's a quick way for anyone to lose their life, which is listen, that's horrible. Some people deserve it, but it is horrible when people just do that when hey, they're just trying to get to work and something happens. Like accidents do happen, but it's ridiculous, right? And that's why it's like I've had I was a passenger in a friend's car and he had to go around a car and he went a little bit into a bike lane. And a cycle I had my window down. And was like, hey, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here before I beat the shit out of you. And he was like, oh, easy, man. And I'm like, no, who do you think? This is a car, idiot. You're gonna die. You look out for me, stupid. But now he was offended, but I'm like, listen, you're wearing spandex in a public place. Shut the fuck up, right? Like this
yeah.
not it's absolutely disgusting, right? So it's one of those things where I don't understand why the people are seeking some sort of well we should be on a main road, absolutely not, right? And same look, it's the same principle is that if you educate people young on how to interact in the workforce, do you think that that would be negative or positive?
I think you would get a lot more unionization. Um, and
I'm
I
all
think
for it, all
yeah,
for it.
and I think that's kind of why there's like the stuff going on in Florida with the whole "Don't Say Gay" bill, and they recently expanded it to 12th grade, where they're like, "All right, we're gonna not tell them about this," and then they're hoping that the internet doesn't exist. um,
I don't know
because
about
I
that.
don't know if you know this, but I figured out porn before we had sex ed because
When did you have sex ed?
we had sex ed when I was in 5th grade, so this is about, like, mid
Okay,
2000s? Yeah,
yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
Well, because I
So
had it in fifth grade too, but we didn't have any internet because I was,
yeah.
it was
So
1990. So
okay. So, yeah, porn for you was, like, the pile of Playboys in the woods that's been there since, like, 1967 or whatever.
well, I remember somebody showed me a nudie mag.
Mhm,
I would have been maybe grade 6, grade 7,
mhm.
somewhere around there. And I told him it was because he was younger than me, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, you're a pervert." He goes, "What?" And I'm like, "If you look at that, you can't get it out of your head. So every time you look at that, it makes you a fucking perv." And he was like, "No, I'm not a pervert." I'm like, "You're kind of." And then the funny thing is, it's come true where you're like, "Oh yeah, pornography is one of the only things that you can't detox from if you're addicted. Like, it's just in your mind. So you
Yeah,
gotta like just constantly fight." Which I'm like, "Listen, I'm a vanilla pervert. I love pornography, and
a
it's
vanilla
not like
pervert.
it's yeah. Well, listen, I'm not a
No, no,
weirdo.
no,
I
no,
just
no, just I'm just imagining, like, if we ever make T-shirts, ice
yeah,
cream cone
yeah. Be
thing,
a vanilla pervert. No.
and then just, like, you know, the weird '70s glasses and the vanilla pervert.
Be like, vanilla pervert. Yeah,
No, not the actual person. The cone is the pervert.
that's also fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Seems totally reasonable.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, there's a some degree of exposure. Like, look, in all honesty, while
Mhm,
there, I think sex ed is important for people to understand and not be taken advantage of. At the
mhm.
same time, I feel like that's not where school should be anything. Like, okay, like, should you be aware? Sure, there's information and communicable diseases, STIs, pregnancy, things that work. Totally reasonable. But after that, you're like, yeah, it's for education. It's not sex class. Like, what? It's
Mhm.
fucking weird, right? Like, I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, when we got to, this again, California sex ed, they're not really, pulling any punches. But again, it wasn't like, "All right, here's how to have sex because we're right next to the San Fernando Valley." No, it was just like, "All
I feel
right,
like it was a little bit
fucking
like that though, like just a
no,
little bit.
ovaries, fallopian tube, vulva, vagina." Like it was, here's the stuff,
Well,
and then that
you
was it.
had a dad who was in medicine, so
Yeah.
your understanding was like, did your dad ever have that talk with you? Because like,
I asked him where babies came from when I was 4, and he brought out a diagram, which is never good. He's just kinda, "Oh, I've been waiting for this," and I can tell, like, in hindsight, I bet when after he did that, he goes to my mom, and my mom goes, "I think you were meant to do that in about 10 years. You should have just said, you
yeah,
know, 'Mommy and daddy love each other, make a wish.'" Like, just,
yeah, well, yeah, but that's like, see, that's the thing is like, I've heard of people explaining it using medical terms and
mhm,
jargon and stuff, and very like uh, non-weirdo explanation, which I'm like, I understand that, but also children are children. And like, I always think back to Kindergarten Cop, where it's like, boys have penises and girls have vaginas, when you're like, that shit's fucking hilarious, right?
yeah, it is.
But at the same time, you're going like,
I think it's
how?
also good for, like, if, God forbid, if, your kid is,
Yeah,
assaulted, they
yeah,
can explain what happened to them.
yes, yes,
Um,
and that's why it's like taking the stigma of it away. I
mhm,
think on a lot of things is important, but then give children the tools to understand it in a medical way, where you're like, it's the same thing like the workforce, right? Like, realistically, a, a child understanding how their skills impact the grand scheme of the universe, and how they can uh, um, grow their skills and become have their own self-worth, right? Like, that's an advantageous things, right? Like, young kids having their own paper route and being able to do that was like, hey, I earned this, I'm going to buy myself a gift because I did
yeah,
this. That's a very beneficial thing for your growth, your understanding, your self-confidence, and your own personal self-image, right? So
mhm,
it's kind of like, how can you land on the right side of that line, where it's like, hey, you're exposing people to stuff that, like, I'll be honest with you, the what you refer to as the "don't say gay," which, it, let's be clear, it doesn't say "don't say gay" anywhere in the
I know,
bill. That's just
I know.
a hippie liberal
That
thing.
that's,
But
like, just the colloquial term for it, but you know what I mean,
no,
yeah?
no, no, it's you and your hippie friends colloquial term is not accurate. Now, the, the point is this, though, is, should children be protected? Yes. Should they be educated? Also, yes. So finding that fine line between exposing kids early versus giving them access to the tools so that they can grow properly are two sides. And that's why I'm like, if you have it's like, I feel like if you had a small business and you brought your kids to do work, I'd be like, absolutely.
Yeah,
And also, you know what? Give that kid a paycheck.
yeah, I think it's
Like,
different when it's, like, your children, because that kinda just falls under the banner of chores. You know what I mean? A little bit, but
wow, but that's the thing is, I know business owners and parents who, when I was growing up, they were taking advantage of their kids. They didn't pay their kids, and the kids didn't have a better life because of it. They were just
mhm,
using cheap labor, which I'm like, fuck you.
yeah,
You're a piece of,
yeah,
like, that's where you're like, well, no, now you're just taking advantage of kids versus giving them the time to grow and mature, and that's right. So it's like, I was fortunate in that my dad sacrificed so much so his kids could have a better life than he did, right?
Right.
And that, but then him exposing us to the work environment and growing that way was a huge step above even other students having an understanding of how businesses work and stuff like that, right? So like it's it's also too like how do you regulate who can have kids, right? Some people are just pieces of shit. Like it's you're like
Yeah, then you start falling into, like, eugenics territory and stuff. Yeah, I don't
yeah.
really wanna,
Oh God, no, that's a
yeah,
horrible conversation. That's
yeah. No, that's super fucked.
yeah, yeah. But that's
But,
that's the real question is like if kids are benefiting, I'm all for it. But if they're just being taken advantage of, like, then obviously no, let them go play. Like, don't be an
mhm.
asshole,
Yeah,
right?
let them go play, and they shouldn't feel obligated to have to go, do overnight stuff at the fucking meat packing plant or whatever.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine being like, "Oh, I got put my hat on, got my
Yeah,
pipe. I'm going
yeah,
to the meat factory for cleaning." You're like,
yeah. No.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And also, too, these kids were immigrant children, where you're like, number one, what the hell? Like,
What?
that's ridiculous. But now that it's like, oh, it's opened up to all kids, you're like, it's not better, guys. It's not. It's not a move in the right direction at all.
Yeah, it was just a real dumb shit for
Yeah,
for a
but
lot of what was going on.
I definitely want
Yeah,
someone's campaign though for like the coming elections to be this, be like, bring it back, boys. Like just
yeah.
'cause,
I mean,
I'd vote for that kid.
yeah. I think you could. Well, okay. I have this prevailing theory that people are more leftist than they think they are. Um, where
Yes.
if it like don't look at the name with the donkey or the elephant next to it.
Yeah.
Just look at the policies.
Yeah. Yeah.
9 times out of 10, what a sane person will want for themselves and their family is leftist shit. You know,
So
good paying jobs, overtime, unions, the ability to make a
100%.
living off of that kind of shit.
Look, let's be very clear, okay? Nobody wants someone like Donald Trump, but people will choose him because the alternatives are mental cases and murderers. And you're going, I'd rather the shady business guy.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's just because, and that's you're absolutely right. I feel like because there was a whole thing on this where they were saying it's more so that there are people, most people are center, but the problem is the center has now moved, and
yeah,
because the center has moved, people are like, well, you're on the other side, and you're like,
yeah.
I didn't change, man. I'm just saying, you know what? Like, look, when I in my youth, I was very much against unions. Why? Because they were an expensive alternative. But now, when you go into the history of unions, you start to understand, be like, oh no, 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 no. There's a significant benefit with regards to authority and power that unions are very important to society as a whole
Yeah.
versus like look but that's argument can be made also of organized crime. As soon as organized crime disappeared, uh that was when unions started to lose power as well, and government started to just grow uncontrollably, right? Why? Because they could write their own checks and nobody gave a shit, right?
Well, I think organized crime is still like around, just
not
differently.
as not as
Not as
prolific
powerful.
as
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was, right? And that's
yeah.
why is
You
you
don't have
have
like Frank Sinatra hanging around with the fucking mafia. Like that's not really a thing anymore.
no, and that's why
Yeah.
it's like the power that they do have is weaning on a daily basis, which you're like, that's the problem is you have
Weaning,
hey, but
waning, idiot.
ah,
Okay, I just love the idea of like
thanks
that
for
power
correcting me. I
is
appreciate
waning, and then I'm just thinking of like getting a kid to stop drinking breast milk or something
that.
like that. That's weaning.
Same,
Nothing. Yeah,
same, whatever. I think we
yeah,
said the same word. But anyways,
yeah.
the no, I appreciate that. Um, knowledge is a benefit to everyone.
Mhm.
So, but that's the thing, right? Like, is that those checks and balances? Like right now, I know in Canadian government, and I'm sure in the U.S. side of things too, you have a bunch of politicians who are like, we're going to hold ourselves accountable. You're like, that's not a real thing.
No, you're not. Yeah,
That's not. And they're like, you know what? We investigate ourselves and we found out we did nothing wrong. And you're like,
yeah, and that's
yeah,
not how that works.
not at all. You
Yeah,
can't investigate yourself and then go, wow, I'm blameless. If anything, I deserve a raise. You're like, I did a bit about that where I'm like, can you imagine you and your coworkers could decide that you get when you got to get benefits, when you got to get vacation, and when you got a raise? Do you think that you would ever reject it? And they're like, obviously not. They're like, okay, so why don't all companies work that? But it's crazy. Okay, then why
Yeah.
does the government work like that? And they're like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
like, ta-da! There you go, boys. That's called no accountability, and that's why. If we had accountability, I'd be all for child labor because we don't. Meh,
Yeah.
boo.
It's kind of the same thing with automation. Like, I'm for automation if by having stuff be automated, we get, universal basic income and you can live off of the, value created and do what
Yeah,
you want to do with your life. But instead, it's going to be like, oh, fucking another job got automated. Good luck, capitalism. Like, it's not going
exactly.
to be like that.
Well, that it's
Yeah.
it's where the people who are automating things, they're like, well, that's capitalism. Brr, brr, brr. And you're like,
Yeah.
that's no, no, no. You have to. You can't just automate a system and then let people go, right? Like that's interesting story. And people who are viewing is check out the history of the word sabotage. It came from the word sabo, which is a type of shoe that was used to throw into a loom to sabotage it as a protest of automation.
I did not know that.
It's
That's
a
cool.
wonderful story. It's very
Yeah.
cool. Also,
I
in
know.
France, yeah. Well, just
I know about like who the Luddites were, which were people who
yeah,
would like smash, looms and stuff because
yeah.
it was, taking their jobs.
But yeah, and well, that's the thing. Also, too, anyone who doesn't know what's happening in France, please Google it.
Yeah,
It is available on some social media, not all
yeah.
social media. So
So, long story short, they raised the retirement age from 62 to 64, and France does what it does best, and uh, they are protesting like a motherfucker, and I'm proud of them. Viva
uh,
la France! Yeah,
honestly, I'm very proud of them, and I'm a little bit disappointed in Greece that they're not leading the revolution. But hey,
mm.
revolution is revolution. The issue too is that their leader did not use a democratic process, which is what he's supposed to do, but he
Macron.
bypassed
Yeah,
it to automatically put through. I don't want to say his name; he's a loser. But so what they did was he superseded the government authority and
hmm,
just made it a law. And you're like, that's the thing is there is a democratic process. He chose to bypass it with his super political powers
yeah.
and going, well, suck it. Too bad, so sad. And you're going, this is a guy who has zero interest in being reelected. So he can do whatever he wants. And he's like, I don't care.
Got that
Remember,
senioritis. Yeah.
no, he married a rich woman.
Oh,
So
so
uh,
he's not even trying. It's not even
she's
like
also
a.
quite old and
Oh,
quite wealthy. So he's like,
oh, okay.
don't care.
So we're doing like a Napoleon thing, right? Or he marries Josephine, and then
Yeah.
he's like, all right.
Which hey, I get it, right?
Yeah.
As a active house husband, trust me, I'm all for it. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, you just destroyed your entire country because you're an a-hole, right? And these
Mhm.
are million-person protests, everyone. So definitely educate yourself in that because hey, if the French don't have child labor, why do we have it in North America? It's a fair question.
Yeah.
The French are poof, dodgy.
Yeah. And
So
also for to people who, listening to the episode, if you're on YouTube or if you're on Twitter at Generation Dan on there,
please
um,
do.
yeah, yeah, let us know. Are you okay with, your teenager? I'm not going to say children. I feel like if you're 10, fucking paper route or that's it. No,
Maybe youth.
yeah,
The
okay,
youth because like I feel like 14 would be a good age. 12 is definitely too young. Some
yeah,
13-year-olds, but I think most
okay.
14-year-olds can have something.
Are you okay with if you had a kid, them working in jobs if they wanted to,
Mm.
and if they were, not fucking crushed under the heel of capitalism? Um, I don't know how
They
to
all
word that without bumming myself out.
the
Yeah,
oligarchs of today. Let's
yeah,
call it
sure.
that.
The
Yeah.
oligarchs of
They're
today,
taking
like,
advantage of everybody.
yeah,
So that's fair.
yeah. So if or just if you have a kid, are you okay with them working in your business if you had a business? Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever version of that you want to answer, put it in the comments or at Generation Dan. Um,
You can send
generation
us a
underscore
tweet.
yeah, generation underscore Dan on Instagram. If you want to see something or want to see us talk about something, let us know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then
Happy
where
to.
can they find you?
I'm at Dino the Genetic Marvel. I am starting to upload some stuff. I've been recording some improv and some comedy sets. The comedy set Wasn't horrible, but realistically, the improv was quite entertaining. So I'm going to be loading those. I'm also documenting my weight loss journey because I'm coming up to 30 days before a trip I have coming up. So I'm thinking of doing a little exercise in just accountability and progress and blah 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 blah. So please check out Dino the Genetic Marvel on YouTube, Instagram, the Book Face, and everywhere else because. Like Atlas said, wherever it is, I'm there and I'm sharing all sorts of weird shit.
Find me at Atlas Novak on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. I do short form sketches, mostly about having epilepsy. I'm on YouTube. Search my name, or now the name is the Epileptic Comic. So take a look for that. And then, or if you play Card Fight Vanguard, at the podcast Nexus at Night. That's my other show at Nexus at Night on Twitter, Instagram. So
Wicked.
there you go. So
Have
thanks
a good day,
everybody for
everybody.
listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.